you, Nigel. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Gadigal land and pay my respects to elders and all Aboriginal people, both past, present and emerging. And it is important to recognise that wherever we are always on Aboriginal land. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I would like to, first of all, thank you for the support you are providing for your child as they take on the challenges of remote learning during this period of lockdown. And for many families, it's a balance between working from home, job security, juggling different school approaches, and keeping the spirits up. However, on a positive note, at least we know this period of time will pass and we'll eventually get back to face-to-face learning. But in the meantime, we will continue to refine our processes, keep you up to date via email, social media, through these online presentations, and by reading our Inner Buzz newsletter, which is published every fortnight. And it was certainly an action-packed edition last week, and I hope that you were able to read that version of our newsletter. Now, today, this presentation will focus on attendance and assessment, and of course, our live question and answer session. But just a few more points from me. Please have a look at our INSID Archie Portrait Prize entries and lock in your vote by Friday, the 6th of August. The link was in the last newsletter, and I'll send out another link tomorrow for you. And I have to say, I was so impressed by the talent shown in these entries. And hopefully at some stage in the future, you'll be able to view the portraits in person. Now, Miss Lane has also posted some information today to our students about some great filmmaking competitions. And while we are learning remotely, it's a great opportunity for students to be creative and explore an area your child might be passionate about. So please encourage your child to enter those competitions. On a not so positive note, sadly, the Game Changer Challenge has been postponed, but we will keep you up to date about when we get the details about the next date for that. But please, finally, it's really important that we tap into what your needs are. So make sure you post future webinar topics in the chat section for this presentation today. So on that note, I'll hand over to you, Chris, for assessment.
Thank you, Robin. Obviously, it is business as usual, and we will be talking about assessment with our checkpoints, as a lot of you now know about. We're also going to touch on a little bit about attendance, because we think that that's a really important element in terms of what we are doing here at the school to best support the child. So thank you, Nigel, for sharing that PowerPoint. Just to really briefly talk about attendance, what's really important is actually the fact that we do have requirements from the Department of Education, and we thought today we'll just share a little bit more about it with each and every one of you, obviously in this Zoom, as well as obviously through the recording. We'll also then talk a little bit about supporting engagement during remote learning, how we are doing this at school, what systems we have in place to make sure that your child feels supported. And I know that we're really rich in terms of our documentation and support with our remote learning guides for parents as well as for students, and the structure that we've put in place. And we really are thankful for that incredible feedback that we receive, because as educators, for us, that tells us that we're hitting the mark. So thank you so much for all the people that have taken the time to give us that positive feedback. And also thank you to the families who obviously give us some opportunities for further improvement and refinement, because that's what we're about. As end users, obviously, each and every one of you at home, you are the partners with the teachers here at school. So you yourself have a stake in that. So thank you for that feedback. And then finally, we'll look at what this means for families. And I think that we'll keep it obviously something, it is quite simple to understand in terms of the expectations. So just first, requirements from the Department of Education. As a requirement during remote learning, a student will be marked as flexible if they participate and complete work during remote learning. So this is from the Department of Education. We need to identify students that are completing work, that are engaging in their lessons, that are basically the version of coming to school, but in the remote learning environment. Those students are marked as flexible. Now, it doesn't mean that all students are marked as flexible just because they are at home, because some students who are unable to engage for whatever reason will need to be marked as absent, sick, or leave where that is applicable. Now, for a lot of families who have identified certain reasons and restrictions that have not allowed them to engage in remote learning, we are aware of that. But for some students, it is about identifying the students' needs and how to best support them. But that is our requirement from the Department of Education, that you can only be marked flexible if you are participating and completing work during remote learning. And if you are not, the students will need to be marked as absent, sick, or leave. Now, in terms of what we are doing as a school to support that and how we are coming about with that, we have our remote learning activity report that we have developed, because we felt it was really important to have that opportunity to contextualise what remote learning looks like for students at home, given all the incredible resources that we have. And we are a very well-resourced school. We are very fortunate in terms of what we are able to achieve. So the remote learning activity report adds that human element. What we do is we, first of all, gather data from all teachers. So we look at Microsoft Teams. Teams has a fantastic function called Insights, which allows us to see activity of students in Meet Nows, activity of students in OneNote, as well as engaging in chats in the Teams from the posts. We also look at the OneNote book. So imagine if a teacher could take home a student's workbook and mark it over the weekend. We are really fortunate because our lessons are being driven by an online version of this, which means that it is instantaneous and every teacher has access to every student's workbook. And then obviously the Meet Now. The Meet Now is so important in terms of connection. It is important because it is that human element. I know that so many of our incredible students are connecting through the Meet Nows with their teachers, where teacher goes through instructions. They sometimes share screens. They allow for any questions to be asked. And when we do remember, because we do have a lot going on, we do record it too and post it for future students. But the best way to ensure that you get maximum in terms of your interaction with your teacher and your peers for students is to make sure that you follow that timetable. But we collect data from all of these data points. We also look at our Feedback Friday data, because that is really important in terms of understanding how our students are travelling in a supportive way, and we collate all of that data collectively. From there, we identify students that might be of concern. Now, that data is raw data at the time. It's data set from different teachers, different lenses, different activities. It hasn't been contextualised yet. So what we do, and we just did previously in our executive meeting, is we actually analyse the weekly data at our executive every Tuesday, and then we contextualise it, because there are elements and other factors at play. And I know that Ms Davies has been doing an incredible job in terms of the wellbeing and learning support and being in contact with families and students with those additional needs. And what we do is we contextualise, making sure that we understand, well, if this is the data and what the data is presented to us, what do we need to factor in terms of that individual child? What is that individual child's circumstances, and how is it that we can best support it? From there, what we do is we develop a plan of action to support those identified students, and that can be completed by either executive, wellbeing, or learning support teams. Now, our wellbeing meeting is coming up this Thursday, and we already have our first lot of students that we want to see if we can meet those additional needs. Now, what that means for families. For families, thank you, Nigel, it means that for families, what it means is it means that we are in partnership with you. Remote learning is a partnership between the school, the students, and their family, and you know your child best, because context for us is really important. What we do is we will reach out to any of those identified students to see how we can best meet their needs. It is not a reflection on your incredible efforts at home. All it is it's a school saying that if there is anything additional we can do, because the child is at the centre of what we do, then let us know what we can do to further help. It is not a criticism at all. It is just how can we best support their needs? And we do appreciate that partnership that we spoke about between the school, the student, and the family. The families can also, because we like to consider you as the second teacher in the classroom, families can also make a referral for their child. If they are concerned, and I thank you for those families that have already done so, in asking some clarifying questions around what remote learning should look like and individualising that support, you are able as a member of the family to be able to make those referrals to the school, because at the end of the day, the more information we have, the more that we can base all of this data and contextualise all of the way that students are progressing through remote learning, which is a difficult space to occupy. The thing is that we will, when we do reach out to those identified students, is we will also talk about our mandatory requirements in terms of attendance, which we went through in that first slide. So we will be talking about if there is a need, and I know the students, touch wood at the moment, that have had, you know, difficult circumstances in terms of illness, and we hope that they're making a speedy recovery. But that there adds that context about how to best mark that child. So what it is it's about that partnership between home and school. It's about having that open and honest conversation, and it's really children are at the centre of what we do and making sure that we meet those needs. So essentially, if you do have any questions or any further questions about that, please throw that in the questions and answers. And now we'll hand over to Nigel about our check-in with checkpoints.
Thank you, Chris. So speaking of the successful partnerships that is currently going on during remote learning, just with the checkpoints, I just wanted to start off by saying, like, as Chris mentioned, the OneNotes are there, the Meet Nows are there. All of the teachers have seen the learning happening. So it is definitely happening, and that's a testament to your hard work as students, as families, and the hard work of the teachers as well. So everyone should be commended with that. But as usual, checkpoints are a function to see, well, what are the next steps to the learning that has happened? So we are going to continue going on with checkpoints during this remote learning time. And as I said, the purpose really is just to see, well, for the teachers to plan where to go next, and likewise for the students to understand what level they are at. So with all of that in mind, that third point there, the checkpoints are not intended to cause stress, not at school and definitely not during remote learning. So a bit of revision there, a bit of extra work could be useful, but during this period of remote learning, I want to emphasize the priority should be looking after your well-being as students and taking care of those around you. That by far is the most important thing during this different time that we are in. So checkpoints were never meant to be causing stress anyway, but even more so, we really want to emphasize to our students and to our families that the priority is the students' well-being and looking after those around you. So just to unpack that a little bit more, there is a few differences between the checkpoints that we would have been doing if we were face-to-face and what it will look like in the next period of remote learning. So what is the same? Well, as I just touched on, checkpoints are low stakes. They should not be a source of stress. It's the same. Students will be doing checkpoints across all of their subjects, and they'll be able to get some feedback from their checkpoints to help them improve in a later stage. So it's the same thing, business as usual, for lack of a better phrase. However, some of the things that would be different, I mean, it might be a bit obvious, but they will all be kind of online based and submitted online. If the teachers are asking students to do a piece of writing, or as head teacher maths, I know there's a lot of like working out handwriting, it will still involve maybe taking some pictures of the physical work and uploading that. So that might be a bit different to normal, where we might just collect them in class. Secondly, students will actually have more responsibility ensuring that they follow the instructions around things like the timing and the resources that they use. At school, we often try, the scientists in me, to try to create a relatively controlled environment. So the new thing about remote learning is that that students will have more responsibility in this. And from my limited experience so far, the students are more than capable of taking this responsibility on. Likewise, the submission windows will be more flexible, just to allow for the remote learning ecosystem that we are in. The third point, there may be extra check-ins. So during this period of remote learning, it is challenging. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, you know, the students' well-being and your family's well-being is the most important thing. So we will be doing extra check-ins on what has been covered during this remote phase when school operation resumes. So for example, if I was to do a science checkpoint today, it's likely when school gets back to normal, we'll still cover a similar things just to make sure that everyone is caught up. And lastly, learning support adjustments and arrangements will look a little different in our remote learning phase as they would at school, where that one-on-one support is more physical in the classroom. So I've got one more slide just to end on some other important points that I want to touch on before we finish up on this assessment focus. The submission of some checkpoint works will be postponed. So especially during that end of term 2, there were some works in the humanities, in English, which were around that due time, but there was already things like lockdown was coming in. So I just want to make it clear that for all of the students who are still unsure, was this thing submitted, those works will be postponed. The teachers are very aware of the complex situation at the end of last term and obviously at the beginning of this term. So some of those checkpoints works will be postponed. If you have any doubt, just ask your teacher, but they will be posting that already. Secondly, the school will continue to work with students and families to provide support. So as Chris mentioned, many of you would have been receiving some calls from Miss Davies to help with students who do require that additional support. So you can be rest assured that this will continue. And the last point that I would like to end on and emphasize is that, this remote learning space or time, it will end, as Robin's alluded to. And it's really important to note that additional support will be provided on the return to face-to-face teaching for all students, whenever that happens. So you can rest assured that the checkpoints are here just for us to have a sense of where the learning is going, but additional support will definitely be provided to all students as we get back to face-to-face, because we do understand that this is a challenging time. So on that note, if you do have any questions, I haven't seen any pop up in the Q&A about the remote learning, but I might stop sharing my screen there and go back to the view of myself and Chris and Robin at school. If anyone does have any questions, please make sure you put it in the question and answer, and we can get to that.
Okay, well, I think the first question in relation to can questions be asked after class time? Can we send emails to the teacher? I think we just have to be mindful that teachers are actually teaching all day, so they may not be able to respond straight away. So it is possible, however, if you wish to send an email, please send it through to our Inner Sydney High School email address, and then our office staff can direct your email to the teacher that you wish to contact. But just please keep in mind that they are working pretty hard day in, day out, so they may not be able to respond to you straight away. But feel free to send those emails to the email address, and we'll be able to direct your email to the right teacher.
And that is a great question, Mikel. I think also just building on that, for your child who is in year 8, you also have the opportunity for your child to reply to the post. So every lesson is posted. This is the lesson that we are doing today. The best way for the child to empower the child, so it's not just the family having to do, the heavy lifting for them, is get the child to actually reply in that post. Because if they at the teacher, so let's say, for example, it's Mr. Kwan or myself, if it goes at, and then you start typing Kwan, Mr. Kwan will get a notification for that question, and we'll be able to answer it there. And it's also a really great resource for other students too, because they might have a similar question. Now, I just will remind people, if they can just put their questions in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, we will try to get to the chat as well. I noticed a question just from Anna, just about balancing school computer time with entertainment computer time. I think that would be an issue that is faced by many families. I think that the school's done its absolute best to engage students in things outside of screen time too. I know that our Legends of Lockdown through Feedback Friday has been an incredibly popular element that students can access. There are also some other challenges that are out there that teachers are sending students to do to try and create that practical element. I know that students that would normally participate in cooking have been set challenges that they can actually assist at home with some of the preparation of mealtime and be able to, take photos of what they've done and upload that. So I think, look, at the end of the day, the school can do that element, and it's about that partnership with the school and the family. If it is an ongoing concern, and we need to individualise further, please reach out to the school. But I would suggest that you really need to try and advocate for your child to access these other alternatives.
Okay, now in terms of if you have not received a call from the school, that is actually a good thing. And we really won't be calling parents unless we're really concerned about the level of engagement. But please keep in mind, a phone call isn't always a negative thing either. It might be actually a positive thing. And it's just a way that we can keep checking in with the wellbeing of our students. So at this stage, there's been no issues in relation to the attendance, but we just wanted you to make sure that we are aware of it. We are monitoring our expectations from the Department of Education, and we certainly will let you know if there are any concerns whatsoever. I think if your child is not well, I think it would be important to actually email the school and let us know, because it's like being at school. If your child is unwell, they shouldn't have the expectation of doing the work for that day. So please let us know. Please email the school with your child's details, and then we can take it from there.
Also, just a quick question that was from Aletta, just about checkpoints and if you require exemptions or adjustments. Mr. Kwan, do you want to just talk about the process for that, please?
Yes, so Aletta, if you do want to, for any reason, if you're not feeling that the checkpoint is something that you and your family can do, if you are in contact with the learning support team already, you can communicate that through them. Otherwise, the teachers will be looking through checkpoints, and if students aren't doing them, it'll just be a conversation that we'll have with the students. And if it's something like, if the student says, oh, look, we're just struggling a little bit during this period, I'm not able to do it, that's fine. That will be to the extent of it. So if you are, I don't feel like you'll need to be doing any special requests unless it's a serious concern. If the students are struggling with it, we're very, very conscious it's a difficult time. So we're happy for them to try it later, or just to, as I mentioned, touch base a little bit when we get back into face-to-face.
Just another question, just about learning support teams and just a little bit of more information. Thank you, Mikkel. Our learning support team goes by a referral process. Normally it's referred from teachers for students to help them in terms of accessing the content more effectively. I know that personally I've actually worked with your child today, and he did incredibly well with some of the additional support that he needed. So I think if you need to know a little bit about more learning support teams, the first thing that you would do is just contact the school, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every child needs learning support. Learning support is there for students that have additional needs identified or disabilities that they have sign-offs for, generally speaking, and they normally come with additional funding, and that's where the learning support team comes in. It does not mean that the learning support team only exclusively works with those students, but that's where the bulk of the resource goes. I would suggest that we start in terms of wellbeing, and I know that you've been in contact, Mikkel, with the wellbeing team already, and I think that in terms of meeting your child's needs, if there is anything that the school can do any further, just keep us posted and let us know. But from what I saw today, he was experiencing some great successes during remote learning.
And I think, Chris, just seeing that last comment there about the weather, we are so fortunate that we've got some nice weather this week. And going back to that point about being online all the time, please try, if possible, get outside, get that fresh air, break up the screen time so there can be some time to enjoy the outdoors. And even consider, as I mentioned before, about the field competition. It's a great way for students to engage with their passions and a way in which they can get some feedback from teachers and enjoy the opportunity to enter their work into a formal competition.
Absolutely. And look, even if it is bad weather in the coming weeks, we have tried our best to accommodate for that. So keep an eye out. There's an excellent scaffold that the PDHP department have put out in terms of activities that can take place indoors, outdoors, but also if you cannot participate in any physical activity whatsoever, there are still some great activities that you can do. So just keep an eye out for that. If students need any further assistance with that, their lead mentor is probably the perfect person to talk to every morning at 8:50 during that touch point that we have. And can I just say, the trivia and the different backgrounds that have been going on has really been fantastic, and families have been saying how much students have been enjoying and laughing at that 8:50 touch point. Make sure your child gets involved. It really has been excellent, and our lead mentors are doing a fantastic job of that.
Now, Pursue Your Passion, it certainly is on. It is on for Year 7 and Year 8. For Year 8, it has been a modified version due to the changes, of course, due to lockdown. Chris, you made that post just...
We did, yeah, and it is essentially what we're trying to do is really maximise. Our children got an opportunity. They explored identity, they explored sustainability, they explored the community, and then it was pursuing their passion. Now, we felt to do it justice, we didn't want to have to translate it so much in a remote learning environment. So what we did was we almost had like a prequel to it, where the passion that they've chosen, they're asking driving questions using design thinking process to start to delve into some of those pursue your passion topics that they chose, whether it be pursue your passion with the food safari or with the outdoor recreation or fitness programming, or if it was the under the microscope, all of those wonderful opportunities. So currently it is based in their original semester 1 teams for Year 8, and all they need to do is be guided by their PYP teachers there. Hopefully, fingers crossed, when we do manage to get back to face-to-face teaching, we'll be rolling out these incredible opportunities. The planning is already there, the programs are already there, and in fact, teachers are even programming in the remote learning sense, but we're trying to hedge our bets with this. We're really trying to make sure it has maximum impact. So we are holding off until things are a little bit more clear. So on that note, that 30 minutes has flown, Miss Matthews.
It certainly has, Chris, but look, I would like to say, I can't see there's no more questions are coming up, so we might leave it there. But what I would like to say is that, look, we're really conscious of the fact that our Year 12 students, it's going to be a really tricky time for them, for their families. So on a personal note, my heart goes out to those Year 12 students and their teachers. It really is a difficult time. I have to say, from my perspective, I'm so proud of the work our students are doing, the commitment our teachers are showing. I think at Inner City High School, we are very fortunate. So I'd like to also thank those lovely parents for your really kind messages. It does mean a lot to us, and it's been lovely to share your thoughts with the staff, because it is a really difficult time. It's certainly a time of great uncertainty, quite different to last year. But once again, I'm so proud of everyone's work and the effort that they're putting in, including you, I know, as parents, because it's certainly not easy. I think that was it now.
Just as you said that, Janet popped up with just another piece of feedback. Thank you very much, Janet. It's very kind of you to say. And thank you to everyone out there, because you are our #1 stars as families at home supporting your children. You are doing an incredible job there. But please make sure that you reach out, because it is a partnership, isn't it, Miss Matthews?
And also, so please, on a final note, any questions, don't hesitate to email the school, let us know, see what we can do to support you, but just keep up the great work, everybody, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you so much.